Okay, we're back. Hello again, Instagram. We're back for our very first episode of the special IGTV series, Navigating the Holidays. Today's episode is going to be with Harpender and Irene Yoga Flow. So we're just going to wait for them to join now, and we're going to be talking about the full moon, that last full moon of 2021. So hello.
Hi.
Hi. Okay, this is the first time I've done it with three people.
Yay! How are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm doing really well. I'm so excited to be speaking with you.
I'm so happy we finally are connecting. It's going to be a really good talk. Yay! And then there were three. Oh, really happy to have you both here with us. How are you doing?
Good. Yeah, we're really excited to be having this conversation. I'm excited that I was like, hey, do you want to have this conversation with founder Shish Fox? And I was like, yeah, I would love to. So having us on.
No, thank you for joining. Where are you both based, by the way? Where are you joining from?
I'm in Los Angeles.
Nice. And what about you, Irene?
Yeah, I'm currently based in the unceded territories of the Coast Salish peoples, which includes the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. So for those of you all who are not familiar with those terms, I'm in Vancouver, Canada.
Wow, okay. Well, we're across the pond. I'm in
Yeah.
and it's very cold here. I have got a bit of a cold, so I'm gonna just apologize for my nasal voice. But yeah, so I thought we could kick things off by maybe just starting with a little introduction to you both. And then, yeah, I'm really keen for us to kind of explore everything there is to do with the last full moon of the year. I can't believe it's the last full moon. So yeah, maybe if we want to start with some introductions. Oh, who would like to confess? It's funny with three people, isn't it?
Yeah.
Irene, maybe do you want to go first and talk a little bit more about what you do?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. Just staring and staring. Yeah, so my name is Irene, and I am a yoga asana facilitator as well as an intuitive tarot reader. My primary business is Irene Yoga Flow. So I work with my students to embody the practice of radical rest, which is a big part of how I teach and lead yoga asana sessions. And I'm also the co-founder and the co-creator of the Women of Color Summit with Harpender.
Amazing.
Awesome. Thanks, Irene. So my name's Harpender. I just put my headphones in, so I'm trying to this doesn't tip over. So my name's Harpender I am a yoga asana meditation teacher. So I work with students one-on-one. So we typically will build out a plan that, oh, there it goes, that has, oh goodness. I typically have my Bluetooth headphones, but they're charging. So we'll build out a plan. So looking at yoga philosophy, yoga asana, meditation, pranayama, as a way to focus on their physical health, emotional, spiritual, and mental. So I typically work with like 3 to 4 private clients per month in person. I love that work. And then outside of that, I am also the co-founder of the Women of Color Summit with Irene. So excited I get to work on that with her. And we've been building that now for the last 2 years. And that work's all about highlighting and uplifting the work of BIWOC within like typically the creative and healing art spaces. It's interesting now, like we're having this conversation at the end of 2021 with the full moon, because I think it is all about reflecting and celebrating how far we've come before we even start planning.
Absolutely. Yeah, beautiful. Is that how you both connected then? Do you both do yoga asana? Is that right?
Yes.
And how did you connect to start Women of Color Summit?
Oh,
Was that a
wow.
long story?
Well, yeah, it's an interesting story. We are a case study of online pen pals, online friends becoming in real life friends. But yeah, me and Harpender met at a decolonization mentorship started led by Costanza Eliana Chinea. And so she is a decolonization liberator educator. And we met through that mentorship. We were paired up as accountability buddies. And we really connected on our views about what we were seeing in the yoga wellness space and decided why not start a summit and see what happens. And from there, it's been 2 years now. So
Oh, no, it's always, I think sometimes you forget you can actually make really good connections online. Obviously, we're connecting now, but to start things up as well. So it's been running for 2 years then, the Women of Color Summit.
Yeah, no, it's been running for 2 years. In that time, we had our first annual summit, which was last year, and our summits are more like a conference style, and that was the Art of Creative Living. This year, we had the Art of Authentic Living. We're going to be in our third season of our podcast next year. We're currently working or in the midst of our second group program, Deepening Your Spiritual Practice and Community. And I can list all these things. So me and Irene have been working on our newsletter that's supposed to go out today or tomorrow. We were just kind of reflecting on in these last 2 years, and particularly this past year, like how much we have really done for this community. And it's been amazing. It's been amazing to be able to see the impact that's been made, not only on the community, but on me. Like, I'm just like, wow, I've changed as a result of all the work that we've done.
That's the best thing, isn't it? When you put when you're working on things that can actually help you as well. We're putting ourselves out there, but it's also benefiting yourself from healing too. I imagine the same as it has been for me at Shushbox. So yeah, no, thank you so much. It's really good to get a better understanding kind of what you've been working on, how you're connected. And I think it just leads us up nicely to, yeah, we're at the end of the year, and I think it's such a beautiful thing to actually self-reflect on the achievements, on, everything that's happened this year, like you say, before we go jumping into the 2022, like planning what's next. And I really like the concept of radical rest, actually, that you mentioned, Irene, because I feel like this time of the year it is, there can be a lot of pressure. So obviously this series that we've put together at Shushbox, we're a platform that supports survivors of sexual trauma. And this series that we've put together for the December period is focused on helping survivors or just helping people navigate the holidays. There can be a lot of pressure, I think, with the holidays coming up, commitments, having to meet different people, family members, going to different events. So I think people, myself included, can sometimes feel overwhelmed by the to-do list, that there's so many things that you need to get done. So yeah, I thought it would be good for us. I know, Irene, you were going to you mentioned that you do the tarot, and we spoke about it the other day, to maybe, before we talk about the full moon in Gemini, or I don't know how you would usually do it, but how we could maybe pull a tarot for around the full moon.
yeah, I can definitely pull a card now to kind of kick us off.
Yeah.
And I do want to say too, like, it is such an overwhelming time, and it's like the darkest hours of the day. Like, we're coming up to the winter solstice. It's gonna be like, even for me, I'm really feeling the call to hibernate and really understand, like, what is my relationship to, like, the end of the year, because I find that end of the year reflections can be quite triggering even for me.
Yeah.
And then having to see different people at a time where I feel like my energy wants to contract inwards, I'm feeling like this need to celebrate and be with other people and like see my loved ones and see some people who I have to see. And it can be quite draining.
Exactly.
Which is what, yeah, which is why it's so important that we have these practices that we can go to. Like when I'm most stressed out are the times where I'm like, oh, I shouldn't do my yoga or I shouldn't pull tarot. But it's like that's actually when I need to do it the most.
It's hard though. It is hard. We've spoken about it a lot on our podcast as well. It's like you have all the tricks and you know all the things that are going to make you feel better, but sometimes, some days you've just got to allow the fact, you know, there might be one day where you just can't pull yourself to do any of those things, and you know, sometimes just honoring how you're feeling in that moment. But yeah, it is good to have that go-to of practices, like you say, or routines or things that you know. How it is for me when I'm working out, I always find it difficult getting on the mat, but I just try to connect to the feeling of how I feel after that. That's how I try to do my workouts these days. Just think about how I'm going to feel after, because it's so cold. It's cold as well. Well, it's cold here anyway. Like, it's so cold. And when the weather's darker and it's colder, you just don't have that motivation, I feel. It's like you're running out of momentum almost.
Yeah, so I am been shuffling while we've been talking. So I guess we can kind of pull a card to kind of start off our full moon conversation. And I guess because this is really about releasing energy in the full moon, which is in Gemini and it's coming up in this Saturday, we can ask the question of tarot of like, what activities, I guess, like what ideas do we need to release for the full moon in Gemini? Okay, so we can ask the question like that. And we got the 6 of Cups. So in terms of ideas that we need to release about the full moon in Gemini, I'm getting a strong sense of releasing certain ideas and narratives of how to connect with our family, whether that's our chosen or given family, letting go as much as we can of perhaps how we think people are going to interact with us, and not being open to new ways of operating with people. And I'm saying this because I know that with the holidays, it can be quite stressful to be with your family. We always have like ideas about what family should be like, and sometimes we might not have been modeled the happiness or the care that we want in our family. But in this full moon in Gemini, how can we let go of some of those fears that maybe hold us back from growth and seeing the people in our lives as they truly are? Because people can change, but at the same time, it's like doing that, because surrender is like one of the hardest things to do, which I feel like is also like a big thing of the full moon. The full moon is about release, but also surrender, which can be very activating for people. So that's kind of what I'm getting from like the energy that we need to release for the full moon in Gemini, which is like, what are some family narratives that you've been holding on to yourself that you can sort of release and let go or transform into energies that can help you see other people as human, as reflections of like your own self.
Yeah, I like that. I like that, surrendering. And it's, you know, it's like you said, it's hard to do that sometimes, surrendering to what is, and you know, removing that narrative that what you think it has to be, it doesn't actually have to be that way, and that narrative can shift and change. And you can, surrendering doesn't mean you know, having to go with the flow. You know, surrendering can mean surrendering to your own needs and wants, which can be, you know, setting boundaries with family members or setting boundaries with your friends. So surrendering to what is, how you're feeling.
Yeah, I like that. It's like, it's not a weakness, and it's not a sign of not having boundaries. I think surrender is letting yourself feel into all those parts of your psyche and your thoughts that you might be a little bit, I guess, scared to interact with. and really see what's in there. Because Six of Cups is generally a card of nostalgia, of family, of like love. And in this like question of what we really need to release, I feel like there's, not everyone has the perfect family, not everyone has a perfect sense of boundaries. So how can we like dive deeper into these stories and narratives and like be able to have, I guess, interactions with people in a way where we can grow from them and we can give people grace in the same way that we can expect other people to give grace to us.
Yeah, that's really nice. I just remembered actually, I wrote, I have like a weekly not to do, because it's not all about, I like to not do to-do lists and have more being rather than doing, but I do have a list that I made last week. And on that list, my phrase that I wrote to myself was, to surrender is not the same as to give in. So surrendering doesn't mean giving in. If a lot of people might think surrender means, oh, I give up, I give in, but it doesn't. It means allowing the process, like you say, flowing with the conversations, flowing with these narratives, flowing with these situations to see how you can surrender to what is and ultimately grow from that. So surrendering doesn't mean that you're giving up or, you're not taking into account how you're feeling. Surrendering is just going with the flow of it, I guess.
Yeah, I feel like that also reduces some of the anxiety that can come with like planning for 2022, of thinking like, oh, what is next year going to look like? Like, what are all the things that I have to do? And it's just surrendering into like a higher power or faith, like the surrender to faith that things are going to be okay. And like, I don't have to be the one to like finagle and like control them into a certain way. I just surrender into the faith that things are going to be okay, even though I find for myself in the winter and the darkness and the unknown, there is a lot of uncertainty. So I do like that surrender into the like faith that things are going to be okay and we don't need to be in control. Although I feel like the narrative sometimes in the West is always like, you are self-made, you're the one in control. And it's just like, my God, I cannot be in control all the time. Like, that's just so exhausting. But yeah.
Yeah, wow, I really I love this conversation already. I'm like, I feel so much better. Yeah, no, I do feel that end of the year, there is that pressure, isn't there, of not just the holidays, but for me, we've got 2 weeks left, but I'm still, which is a little bit much, but I'm still like, what can I do before there's still more I need to do. There's still more that I was meant to do. There's 2 weeks left, and like you were both saying when we first joined, if we reflect actually from this time last year to everything that's happened or all the things that you've achieved, it is that point now of acknowledging what has happened, acknowledging how far you've come, and getting in a comfortable seat to transition into the new year without those emotions of I haven't done enough, or that feeling of what's to come next.
Yeah, especially online, it can get amplified when you see what other people are doing and how people are celebrating themselves. It can kind of make you reflect, oh, I need to be doing more. What have I even done this year? And I think that something that I was working on actually for my Radical Rest series, which I've been doing this December, we talked about emotional rest, and we talked a little bit about the end of the year reviews and how perhaps instead of reflecting about, or not just reflecting on the achievements that we've been achieving this year, like physical, tangible business wins or friendship wins, maybe reflecting on how my nervous system has felt, and like reflecting on emotionally, like where I was, and not really tying that to something that we've necessarily done, but like how have I been in those times when I may have not been always the most comfortable in the silence and the stillness, because I don't think we consider our health, like our emotional health, a lot, and like how we have been perhaps navigating those relationships we have, right? Because I feel like sometimes we like deny and repress, but like, so that's what I've been working on this year in terms of like my end of the year review, which is like I've been thinking about like how has my nervous system been feeling this year compared to like previous years? Like, have I cared for my nervous system? Have I ignored my nervous system?
Yeah, I like that. It's really interesting actually, because I think it is important. Of course, it's important. It's your body. It's all connected. So I think taking account of how you've been feeling your nervous system and how you've been taking care of yourself is so important. As a not even I don't even want to say as a way to measure, because it's not about measuring like how far you've come or how much you've done or how good you're feeling. It's just the case of looking at how you are feeling in the moment. You've been feeling in the moment throughout. I guess it's less of a focus on this end of the year point and more of a continuous check in with your nervous system, like a continuous checking in with how are you doing, how are you feeling throughout the year. I feel there's a lot of pressure sometimes of hitting a goal or going on that race to get to the end of the year, or getting your goals for 2022, getting the goals for 2021. But really it's like, how can we like honor our emotions, our nervous system, like you're saying, throughout that journey, throughout it, without compromising how we're feeling, our health. So yeah, I think that's a really nice one to mention.
Yeah, sometimes what gives me some solace at times, and when there is such a focus on like the end of the year and a new year beginning, it's like it's also just a social construct. Like how long has this 12-month like calendar been around anyways? And it's like trying to base our like worth and our value on how much have I done in this 12 months compared to the last 12 months. It's just like, what is this like unnecessary pressure that we put on ourselves? And I like Irene's point of just like, how is my nervous system feeling? Like, how is my health? Like, who gives a shit like how much I've actually accomplished in terms of like X, Y, and Z and money and like those kinds of things? Like, how do I feel in my beingness? Like, do I feel happy and fulfilled and like I have loved ones around me? Or have I just been working so much, hitting all these like constructed ideas of what it is to be successful, but I'm not happy? So it's just even like for ourselves, I feel like thinking about what is it that I truly need without like the outside world telling me you need to have hit these things by this age to be successful.
Yeah, absolutely. Just being in the moment and connecting to the being of it all. I mean, like you were saying, these months, time doesn't even exist. Really, if you think about it, time is also a construct. So everything is happening now in the moment. So it's like honoring that moment and honoring how you're feeling in that moment, which is something we can all carry into. Although we're saying that the months don't really exist in the time, I'm like, that is something we can carry into the next year or the next moment, or just carry with us continuously, because you do forget, I forget, that time doesn't exist in the way that we are made to chase it, right? We should be chasing time. We should be allowing and flowing and working with the magic of the natural elements, like the moon.
Yeah.
So with the moon itself, for anybody who hasn't worked with the moon or doesn't know much about the full moon, what would you guys say? Obviously, this moon is a full moon in Gemini. I'm not sure what that actually means. I am Gemini. But I don't know what it means with the full moon in Gemini. Does anyone have an overview of that?
Yeah, so with the full moon in Gemini, from what I've read from astrologers that I trust and sort of like, my own relationship with the Gemini archetype, this full moons in general are times when you can see the moon, right? Like the moon is big, lights up the darkness around us. So this is a time where there's a lot of fullness, a lot of peak energies happening. And so with Gemini, Gemini is really an archetype of, I would say, like intelligence and information processing. So right now there's like this peak of ideas and thoughts in us. And so it's like, how can we release certain ideas that we have, because they have been kind of like coming up and rising, coming up to the level, and now they're kind of like full. And so how can we release certain ideas that we've been working with? If we've been holding really tight to certain beliefs, how can we kind of like detach a little bit from kind of like the clinging onness that we have towards certain ideas? So if you have been working with, if you have been finding yourself obsessing or ruminating or pondering over certain repetitive narrative scripts, thoughts, that you can't seem to let go, but seem to find ways to kind of like confirm or like add on to that, I think this time would be a good time to release that energy. And releasing can come in a couple of different ways. Like releasing can mean like moving the energy around. So finding an activity that allows you to do that, like cooking, that kind of kitchen witchcraft vibe. You can also work on coming together with people that you really trust and working with that energy together, like a women's circle or just a loved one circle, right? Because full moon is a time when, because it's so light out, it's a time to gather for people, traditionally, witches. And I was also thinking, because of what we're talking about, doing work around abundance would be really good, considering what we've just been talking about around the stresses of the end of the year. And abundance can also be a really nice way to reframe, how we want to reflect, in a way that can sort of reaffirm who we are without perhaps putting any like transactional, commodified limits to like who we are.
Yeah, I think the full moon, I mean, what do you have your own practices that you also use? So I know you mentioned that with the cooking and the women's circles. Do you have, generally speaking, do you both have your own like full moon practices that you also do, or is this specific to the Gemini archetype that with the cooking? Is that like a general full moon thing, or would you say that's more for this end of year? It's a good like time to do those things.
These are more general guidelines for the full moon. But in terms of my own practices with the full moon, well, with the Women of Color Summit, we have a pretty regular circle. We do new moon gatherings, so that's amazing times.
I need to come to these. I love the moon, so I would, I need to find a new circle.
Yes, you should come. It was amazing. But in terms of the full moon, which I don't have a circle yet for, so it's more of like my own thing. I do really, I'm with my altar. So I will light some incense and be with my altar, which is like my ancestral altar. So I have a photograph of my maternal grandma, my grandpa. And then I might just sit there and be with my altar and might pull a tarot card or two. It's also nice just to like go outside and try to see the full moon. Like unfortunately where I am, like none of my windows I can see the full moon. So like I sometimes have to like go outside, but yeah. It's kind of cold out right now.
I did that the last full moon actually. I remember because it was a really I just really needed to see the moon. And I went out. It was not so late, but I went like with my hat and my scarf. I was like, I'm going to find this moon. And then, I was looking around in the sky, but obviously when it's overclouded, you can't see it. And then I did see it a few days after, because the power of the full moon, it actually lasts, doesn't it? The 2 days before and 2 days after. So it's actually, even though it falls specifically at the peak on one date, it actually has power 2 days before and after. Is that right?
Yeah, I've heard that. Yeah.
So I mean, yeah, I like to just generally use the full moon as like you were saying, you have your new moon So maybe we could talk a little bit for those people who don't know about what you can do on the new moon compared to what you can do in the full moon, because you run your new moon circle on the new moon. Is that, well, obviously it would be on the new moon.
Yeah, we generally try to have the new moon gatherings during the new moon. And new moons are generally a time where, you know what they say, it's about planting seeds and setting intentions. So it's really about, this is a new cycle now, right? Because we're working not with the solar calendar, but the lunar. So the new moon, you can't see the new moon because the earth is like hovering. So it's like, you don't really see her. So this is a time of like, all right, like, what do I want to manifest? What do I want to bring forth? What do I want to work with for this lunar cycle? And so those are sort of the general themes and vibes of the new moon versus like the full moon, which is like, there's almost an intensity to the energies. And there's this idea of harvest, if we also want to go back to like the seasonal metaphor.
Yeah, because when the full moon was out, that was when it was like the prime time for harvesting, because you can see the crop.
Yeah.
Yeah, so with the full moon, I mean, the energy is, for me, I see it as not completion, but it's like what the intention that I set sometimes in the new moon. I kind of, because we were just talking at the beginning, obviously it's not all about tracking like what you've achieved, but when it is the full moon, I like to like reminisce or look at what I set on my intentions on the new moon, and then how it's like coming together on the full moon. Or sometimes the full moon is like highlights that need to be shown to me. So, just generally speaking, like different energy or different situations, I feel like around the full moon, it just surfaces. Sometimes things just surface. And so for people who might be getting closer to the last full moon of the year, it is, in my experience anyway, I've seen things sometimes just surface, and that can be emotions around the full moon. I don't know about you guys, but for me, sometimes I can't sleep properly around the full moon. Like it can disrupt my sleep pattern. So the moon can really have an effect, and it can bring to light, I think, sometimes different emotions and feelings to the surface.
Yeah, absolutely. When I think about the new moon, I think it's another opportunity to start again. It's another opportunity to start new. And I feel like that takes off that pressure if we are looking at end of year, next year, new attentions. It's like every month we can start new. I mean, every day we can start new. So it's like the new moon, we're setting these new intentions where thinking about what is it that we would like to see happen within this month. And then the full moon is a time of, for me, like reflection, celebration. I also make it a intentional practice of going outside, taking a look at the moon, just having awareness of like, what is the cycle of the moon as a way to connect to nature. And like intentionally moon bathing in the full moon. There's typically like, people will have like dances in a full moon. There's so much energy. It's a great time to come together and like dance, to celebrate in that way. Sometimes I will charge my crystals. When I lived in New Orleans, I had a yoga room, and like the yoga room had windows all the way through, all the way throughout. And so like the full moon would shine the light directly into the room. And so I was able to put my crystals out and like charge them. And sometimes I would also put a glass of water, and that would be charging with the moon. And the next day I would drink some and then pour some into some of my plants. But I think like there's just so many different ways we can honor like the full moon. And I think the biggest thing is just having awareness, just the awareness of like, it is a full moon. What can I do? And I don't think there's ever any like right or wrong. It's not like I have to do this ritual, otherwise I'm going to get it wrong. And it's like, no, as long as you have the awareness and you're doing something with intention, that's what counts.
Yeah. I would like to add like this awareness of the cycle of life and death. Because I feel like with the solar year, it's always like it's a 24-hour cycle, whereas the lunar cycle really honors that need to also die. which is like surrender, which is like reflection, which is like it's okay to be still, it's okay to not have to do anything, which I think is really important.
Yeah, you're right. I think it is. And I think it's good for us to connect with the moon in that way. Like you were saying, the sun is there. The moon has its rest. The moon has that moment when there is no moon, and that is actually when it's the most powerful. So sometimes when you're doing nothing, it can seem like you're doing nothing, but in that nothingness is the isness of everything.
Yeah, and like the moon changes, but the moon is still the moon. And in that way, we can also find like comfort too. Like I might be feeling intense, I might be feeling invisible, but I'm still myself at the end of the day. Like this is just one part of myself.
Absolutely. And I think that these are great reminders to just carry with us, carry with us on the journey. I don't want to be like into the new year, but like, carry with us at all times that it's okay to rest. It's okay to just be. It's okay to allow things to come to the surface, especially during the holidays. It is a time that can be quite overwhelming, that can seem like a lot to do, but I think we've covered quite a few reminders here of the fact that there is no race, there is no time, there is no place to be. Everything can be as it is, and you don't have to put that pressure on yourself, or we don't need to allow that pressure from society to be put on ourselves, which is hard. It is hard to remind yourselves of that, I think, when we're living in the Western narrative, which speaks to that so often, of how much have you achieved, or how much have you done, or how much are you doing, or what is next, or what is coming up. So I think it's nice to just reflect kind of on where we are, even in this moment. So, maybe we could, it's been really lovely speaking with you both, but without asking what have you got coming up next year, or, what are you guys working on? How are you feeling in this moment?
Yeah, I'm feeling good in this moment. We have our session for our winter cohort of deepening your spiritual practice and community. So today we're going to be exploring some Buddhist heart practices, having a celebration, because we won't be meeting for the next 2 weeks for the holidays. So today is going to be preparing to be in community with our cohort, which is really exciting. But in terms of next year, we are going to have our third annual summit in September 2022. So that's something that we've been talking about, visualizing, like what is it with our like wildest dreams it could look like without worrying about the logistical side of it. And then we'll have our third, probably winter cohort towards the end of next year. But yeah, we have a few things that we are working on for the Women of Color Summit.
Exciting. No, it's so amazing. And with the cohort, what does that involve? Just like a brief overview, like if somebody was interested, how can they get in touch?
Yeah, absolutely. So they could sign up for our email newsletter. That's probably the best way. So going to the womanofcolorsummit.com, and that's woman with an X. And that way you can stay up to date with all of our offerings. Like you said, we also have a new moon gathering every month. So staying a part of our community in that way. But deepening a spiritual practice and community is a 3-month-long container. We meet weekly for 2.5 hours. There's accountability buddies, but it's all around how do we connect to our own spiritual practices, those that are either cultural, indigenous, ancestral to us. How do we reclaim that? And then a part of that is also looking at decolonizing. So what are these practices that have been colonized? And then how does that show up for us in this like reclaiming process? There's a lot of grieving that comes up as well. So we hold space for folks in that way. And I covered the weeks on decolonizing meditation, on understanding energy from a prana perspective. Today we'll be looking at the Buddhist heart practices. And then Irene covered, I can turn it over to you.
Yeah, some of the other topics that is covered and that I kind of take more of a lead on has been decolonizing toxic New Age spirituality, particularly what we see online, the history of it. I also talk about tarot work, some goddess work, so some moon work, so very relevant to our conversation today. Um, oh gosh, I guess those are the things that are coming up right now for me.
I mean, there's all great things that you guys are doing. It sounds amazing. I'm definitely going to be checking out Women of Colour Summit more. I want to join something. I'm like, oh, I'm going to see what I can get into. I'm really keen to hear what the Buddhist heart practice is. I might have to look a little bit further into that one. But it's been really lovely connecting with you both. I'm glad we finally got to do it. I know we did speak earlier in the year, Irene, and we made it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was really lovely meeting you both. I'm going to share, obviously, the link when I post this for anybody who does want to get in touch for the cohort. And I hope you both have a wonderful rest of the day and amazing last full moon. And it's on Saturday, the full moon.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, happy full moon when it arrives, and I wish you all the best.
Awesome.
Right, thank you so
Thank
much,
you so much.
Malika.
Bye.
Bye.